we try to rely on clear communication, being accessible, our market knowledge and our expertise from the time we've invested in this business and in this industry, and making sure that people understand how we can help them with their financial goals.
You're listening to Ice Cream with Investors, a podcast that is dedicated to teaching you how to better invest your money so that you can live a more intentional life. I'm your host, Matt Four, and it is my goal to teach and empower you to remove the roadblocks to your financial success.
Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Well, you know we like to start with the difficult questions here. Has your favorite ice cream changed?
Oh man, what did I say before? Was it cookies and cream or was it?
You said cookies
chocolate?
and cream.
Was it? Okay, I was gonna say I've got two. It's cookies and cream. The other one's what is what's the cookie batch one? What is that one called?
Like cookie dough?
There you go, cookie dough. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Now,
those two. I don't eat it as much.
I got to ask, you're joining us from Cincinnati, and I have found myself up in Cincinnati more in the past couple of years. When I'm up that way, where is the best place I can get a bowl of ice cream?
Oh man, are you serious right now or are you joking?
No, I'm serious, and I think you've got an answer in mind based off the way you answered that. But
listen, Cincinnati is so I'm not from Cincinnati, okay? And I mean the city's fine, it's cool, but I'm from Cleveland and there's a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Cleveland and Cincinnati. Yeah. But Grater's Ice Cream in Cincinnati is phenomenal. Grater's is well-known establishments all over. I believe they are expanded beyond just Cincinnati, but if you go to Cincinnati anytime in the summertime, really throughout the year, but particularly in the summertime, you're going to see lines outside of Grater's, right? I mean, you pretty much, if you can get inside, great, but typically you're going to open up the door. You're going to be right on the other side of the door because there's a line of people waiting to get their Grater's ice cream. So that is absolutely the place you want to go to.
So I've only been there once, but you're right. It was phenomenal. Like my fiance got some sort of like cream cheese ice cream, which I know what you're thinking sounds horrible. And I thought the same, but then I had it and I'm like, this is the best damn ice cream I've ever had. Tell our listeners.
Is, I mean, they've been here for a long time, and it's. I mean, I got to tip my hat. Grater's is phenomenal.
Good. As long as you don't eat Skyline, then we'll call it even.
I'm not touching Skyline.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, tell our listeners and remind our listeners, what's the scoop? What do you do today?
Yeah, man, so I'm a multifamily investor, primarily working with other investors, busy professionals to invest in commercial real estate. We invest in apartments, larger apartments, and we try to give them the benefits of investing in real estate without the headaches of being a landlord. So I am based in Cincinnati. We invest primarily in the Midwest as well as in the Southeast region. And we like cash flowing properties with some upside potential through what we call value add.
Perfect. You, our listeners can go back and listen to, I think it was episode 16 that you were on before to get basically your whole story there. But you had a marketing background, got into real estate, ultimately made the jump to real estate. But one of the things that I really look to you as a guidance for is this whole idea of markets. And so I think you've done a really good job of kind of detailing out the markets that are hot today, hot tomorrow, and hot in the future. And I just want to start our conversation with, what are you seeing these days? Like, what markets are you interested in? What markets have kind of been on your radar in the past that are no longer on your radar? Just talk us through from a market standpoint what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, great question. So our philosophy is, we don't like to change the markets every year. I mean, when we're making these investments with larger apartments, typically we're looking at a 3 to 7 year hold. So we're not trying to time and find the hottest market where, we're trying to get it perfectly right, because who knows what's going to happen 5-7 years from now. And we kind of have to invest with that longer term viewpoint. So we like things that are steady, somewhat predictable based on the data that's available. And we like to look at kind of tried and true metrics. So we're looking at population growth. We're looking at the industries and the jobs that are in the market. We're looking at the job growth in that market. And then we're looking at the ease of doing business and the ease of being a property owner in that market. So for us, particularly in the Midwest, we don't see like wild changes. So markets like Indianapolis, Columbus, Louisville, Cincinnati, these are markets that are seeing growth, but it's slow, steady, and sustainable growth. So that's what we like. You can see similar markets in the Southeast region, the Carolinas, Georgia, Texas, Florida as well. I think one thing that has happened is there are some markets where, and I'll start with the Midwest, right? So there are some markets where when everything is good, everything is good. So I'll take markets like, I'm from Cleveland. I love Cleveland. You will very rarely get me to say something bad about the city of Cleveland. I don't care what you think about it. But the population in the greater Cleveland area has not been positive in a while. Same with Detroit. Detroit is seeing a resurgence. The downtown area is thriving. But when you look at the overall area, the area from a metro standpoint is not improving. Doesn't mean that there aren't sub-markets that are seeing growth and you can invest to make money there. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying when you look at it from a metro standpoint in the macro, it overall still is not seeing growth. So we shy away from markets like that. It's not to say we would never invest there, but we are paying attention to the overall macroeconomics. So that's just one variable we're taking off the table. Now, when you move outside of the Midwest and you go out west in particular, there are markets that are a bit more cyclical, right? Where the economy is great and booming. They're seeing great, rapid growth, rapid success, right? But when the economy is retracting, well, now you're seeing a big pullback. And, there are markets in Arizona and Nevada, some of these big cities that are more susceptible. So I would be more cautious in markets like that because you don't know what the market's going to look like in these markets 5 years from the time you make that investment. And what we've seen historically, if you look over the last 20 years, is some of those markets recover slower than the rest of the country. So those are the things we pay attention to in markets. It's not really to say this city is better than that city. It's just understanding the dynamics of that market, the mentality of the investor, the mentality of the businesses that invest their resources in those markets, but also government and maybe some of the policies and all those things working together to kind of spur growth.
When you were saying that about the West Coast, my mind immediately goes to like a Las Vegas. When times are good, people are going out there, they're spending money, they're gambling, they're buying expensive clothes, all that kind of stuff. Construction booms because people are buying second houses, vacation homes, Airbnbs, whatever it is. But then when times are bad, there's not a lot of tourism, employment drops, all those sorts of things. So it is that kind of boom and bust. Do you own anything outside of the Midwest today?
Yeah, we have stuff in the Southeast. We don't own anything west of Texas, but we don't invest in anything west of Texas. We own in the Southeast. We've got stuff in Atlanta, Georgia. We've got stuff in the Carolinas. I think we sold the other assets, but we have those two.
Gotcha. Well, where I was going with that is the Midwest has seemed to fair weather this storm pretty well from what I've seen from the outside. We own one storage facility in Indy, right outside of Indianapolis, but beyond that, we don't have anything in the Midwest. We primarily play in the Southeast, but it seems like, when rents were increasing 25% in the Southeast and out in the West Coast, Midwest was still humming at its 3 to 5%. And now rents are down 16% in the West Coast and about flat in the Southeast. Rents are still up 3 to 5% in the Midwest. So I'm just wondering, how have you seen your portfolio play out with higher interest rates and everything going on right now in the apartment sector?
Yeah, I think your observation is pretty spot on. I mean, I would say we saw a little bit more than 3 to 5% in the Midwest during that same boom. I mean, it was more like 8 to 10%, I think, in a lot of the markets. But your point is still half of what maybe you're seeing in some of these other markets. But the thing with the Midwest that is really intriguing, and I think this is important for investors to understand, it's very affordable. And affordability is something that it's a growing issue in this country. When we talk about affordable housing, people throw out words like that. And if you can cut through all of the noise, ultimately, we have to get to a point where people can have the amount of money they need for housing, whether you think that is government control or government assistance, rent restrictions, whatever it is. You have high price markets where people cannot afford rent. There's something going on right now in New York where they're looking at lifting some of the rent restrictions that are in place there. In California, they basically took all of the COVID time frame restrictions and are making people pay back the rent they haven't paid in 3 years, right? So do you think anybody has been saving that money for the last 3 years? So when we get into affordability, the reality is many people need flexibility, and the Midwest provides that. The other thing with the Midwest is people who live here usually don't leave. If you're from here, you got family here, you got ties here, you're not bouncing around looking for the next great job opportunity. Even me, like, from Cleveland, I went to school in Dayton, I went to Chicago, Detroit, I lived all over the Midwest. I traveled a lot for work in California, New York, and Florida, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm all back in Cincinnati, where my wife is from, right? It's just kind of the nature of things here. And the reason that's important is, unlike, again, Las Vegas or Phoenix or some of these other markets, a lot of people move there for jobs and careers, or they were in tech and the tech company moved their headquarters to that market. Well, if that changes, or when that changes, they no longer have ties to those markets. So they're going to move to the next place. Maybe it's Dallas, Texas. Maybe it's Atlanta, Georgia. Maybe it's somewhere else. You don't have that in the Midwest. People look for jobs in this market or in these regions because they have ties to this region. So I think that motivating factor is just different. So it allows us to have more predictability on what's happening in these markets. And to your point, I think that's why you see the highs aren't as high, but the lows aren't as low. And as a matter of fact, there's a data point I just mentioned. Sorry, there's a point I just saw that out of the last quarter, 8 of the top 10 markets for rental growth were all in the Midwest.
Yep, because everything else has probably turned sour. It's funny you mentioned that, because I can think of 2 people off the top of my head that I know that are born and raised in Cleveland who have left and have no desire to go back. Everybody else is like, yeah, I'd move back to Cleveland. And so I don't know what you guys put in the water up there, but everybody always wants to come back, it seems like.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, when you have your family ties, and it's like, I mean, think about it, depending on your life stage. So I'll give you mine, right? I left home at 18, and I went back to Cleveland for 1 year after I graduated college, and I haven't lived in Cleveland since. But once we started having our family and we had our boys, well, we wanted to be closer to grandparents. We wanted to be closer to our family. And we lived in Chicago. We enjoyed it. Life was great. But that started to become a bigger factor for us. And that's ultimately why we wanted to move back to Ohio. Again, move where my wife was, but that was one of the driving factors. So I think the life stage is really important too. When you're single and you don't have any responsibilities, of course you want to live in Chicago or New York or Austin or Miami or LA or, wherever, right? That's great. But once you kind of settle down and have your kids and, you're trying to look 10, 15, 20 years into the future, being around family becomes a little bit more important.
Yep. You, one of the reasons I wanted to have you back on the show is you are a guy that has spent a lot of time in marketing. You've done a really good job building out your personal brand and know a lot about how to build out a personal brand. And selfishly, this is something that I'm working on right now. So I'm just going to spend this next time and use it for myself. But talk to us a little bit about, in the apartment space and the syndication space, 1, why is it important to have a personal brand? And then 2, give us some tips on how you've kind of built your personal brand along the way.
Well, I think we got to start with understanding what a personal brand is. People hear the word brand and it can sound, I don't know, just real fluffy, right? Oh, I'm a brand, right? Like what? So a brand is really just what people say about you or think about you when you're not in the room, right? All of us, we all have a personal brand, whether we are doing anything to cultivate that brand or not. People think something about you, right? They're gonna, they ask your name, hey, what do you think about Matt? Whatever they say, that's the brand. So if I say Nike, if I say Coors Light, if I say, Reebok, if I say Budweiser, whatever you think or felt when I said those names, that's what that brand is to you. Now, certainly those companies have done things. They've spent money on marketing and advertising and all sorts of other things to help, shape that brand message, right? And what they want you to think when you think of their name. But it ultimately comes down to your perception. If you think Coors Light tastes like water, which they would shoot me if they heard me say that. But if that's what you think, then that's the brand to you. If you think it's a cold, refreshing beverage on a hot summer day, awesome, right? But it's up to you. So the reason you want to build a personal brand is simply because you want people to know what it is you're about, but also how you can help them with whatever it is they're doing. So let's move it outside of the marketing world. Let's say I was a dentist. If I'm a dentist, my business is going to be driven by customers, right? I need dental patients in order to grow my business. In order to do that, I might rely on referrals. I might rely on advertising or some different marketing things, but I would want people to know, hey, these are the kind of clients or cases that John specializes in. If you know someone who has that case, refer them to John, right? No one would question that, right? That's the business brand of it. When you are an entrepreneur and you have a business, so in this case, that's what you're doing. If you're getting into apartment syndication or raising capital or anything in this space, or you're a real estate agent, you want people to know who it is you help. If you're a real estate agent, okay, sure, you're an agent. That doesn't mean you take on every single client in the world. You probably have neighborhoods you focus on or don't focus on. You're either a seller's agent or a buyer's agent. You probably have a price point of homes. You probably, have some level of specialization of who you help. So those things are the points that you want people to understand and get quickly so that they know who you can help. Because again, just because you're a real estate agent, like you don't want everyone sending you deals or leads or calling you and you realize I can't really help most of these people. So the clearer you are on who it is that you help, how you help them, what makes you unique, how you stand out, the easier it's going to be for those people to know when to use you. For instance, let's go back to the Coors Light example. If I didn't know what Coors Light did or offered, I just knew it was a beverage in a can. Well, wouldn't that be an issue if I'm taking it to church or something like that, right? And cracking it open and you would think very differently of me if I'm cracking it open in church. Or if I got bottle service at the club and I'm like, yeah, just bring me one can of Coors Light. I want the fireworks and the little pyro going. I had a girl, shaking the can like this. And y'all would think I was crazy, right? Because it doesn't represent luxury or all. So that's my point, right? The brand has to represent something and it doesn't have to be over the top. So the bottom line is if you're going to be in this business, you want people to know who it is you help, how you help them. And you also want to make sure that you convey the best traits and best qualities. Everything doesn't have to be the best, but there should be things that you do better than others or that you can help people with. And in our case, when it comes to apartment syndication, we try to rely on clear communication, being accessible, our market knowledge and our expertise from the time we've invested in this business and in this industry, and making sure that people understand how we can help them with their financial goals. So if someone is interested in investing or they want to learn more about apartment investing, I hope to be one of the names they think of when they're ready to learn more about next steps.
How do I go about defining that for myself, though? If I want to go out there and build a personal brand, how would I define what I want to be or what people think of when they think about me?
Reverse engineer it. So first of all, when we think about building a personal brand, the first thing I would say is you already have a brand. You just may not know what it is. So let's go back to the start of the show, man. You talked about me and my marketing background. You've talked about, other things that I've done with my market knowledge, right? You brought those things up. So yeah. I've built a brand that positions me as someone who understands evaluating markets and market dynamics, as someone who understands marketing holistically, as someone who understands marketing and personal branding. So for you, I would say, what do people already give you credit for, right? What do they know you for? When they think of Matt, what are they thinking to themselves? What's your character? What are your values? What do they give you credit for? And then how do you lean into that so other people can see it? I think a really important way for people to think about this is when you have a brand or you're trying to cultivate or build a personal brand, what you're trying to do is amplify the things people already give you credit for. So if people know you as honorary, trustworthy, respectful, all these kind of things, that's what you want to amplify. But you have to find proof points. I don't know why I keep using this Coors Light example. I'll use it one more time.
You love some Coors Light, don't you?
So Coors Light used to be one of my clients. So I got, I tip my tap to them when I can. I'll go to Nike. So you may not like Nike's, maybe corporate policies or some of those things, but Nike has done an excellent job over the years of surrounding themselves with the top athletes in various sports. So when you think of Nike and performance, most people give them credit for that. So if that's something they've built their business off of, they're going to continue to be the brand for the athletes, the top athletes. They don't just sponsor anybody who's a professional athlete. They want to focus on the best of the best in those particular sports. So that's their brand. Other companies go in a different direction. So I think for you, it's the same thing. It's what do people give you credit for? How do you lean into that? so that people recognize, okay, this is a person who's either, again, trustworthy. This is, here are the 3 or 4 quick traits that you exude, and people, understand that's what you stand for and that's what you represent. Because the reality is that you got to be authentic. You can't just decide you're going to be a trustworthy guy and you're doing all sorts of shady stuff, right? Like you won't build a brand as being someone who's trustworthy. So it's got to match. It's got to match up. So what I was going to say in the example is, most people give Coors Light credit for being cold and refreshing, right? They've said it a million times in every single ad. It was pretty much my credence. So it's a cold, refreshing beer. With that said, they probably don't give it as much credit for being a great tasting beer or having a lot of, hops or flavor or whatever you want to call it. So there's a duality with that. But if you lean into one thing, there's the other side of that scale. And I think you have to be comfortable with that. So the reality is I would talk to people and ask them, hey, what are 3 or 4 qualities that you think I exhibit? Or what do you, if someone asks you about me, what would you say? Like, how do you describe me to other people? And you start looking for those things. If you have business partners or clients, those are great people to talk to, because your perception of yourself may not be their perception of you, right? Again, if I'm in those Coors Light meetings, I know they would say, oh, we're a cold, refreshing beer. And somebody else is like, oh, it tastes like water. But it's easy to drink on a hot day, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's not what we thought we were doing. But you have to get that honest feedback so you can understand the way people really feel you, and then you can address what you can address. I mean, you're not going to change everybody's opinion, but at least you have a more accurate sense of, what people are feeling about you.
I like the idea of leaning into amplifying what you're already good at and what you're already known for. Like, don't try to recreate something if it doesn't need to be recreated. Just amplify what you're already good at to begin with.
Yeah. And you may need to stop something, I mean, there may be something that you're not aware that you're doing that is giving a certain perception that may not be accurate, or may not be the person you want to be in the future. So in that case, you may have to make some adjustments to fix or correct or improve. But again, getting that feedback is really critical.
Before I get into my next topic, we were talking a little bit basketball beforehand. Have you seen the new movie Air on Netflix, or is it on Amazon?
I did. Yeah, me and my wife watched it about a month and a half back. Yeah.
Scale of 1 to 10, no sevens given. What would you give it?
So I would probably give it an 8. I thought it was very odd that they didn't even try to show Jordan at all. I mean, and I get why, but it just felt like the whole time I kept paying attention to it, which is why it was annoying. I would rather either completely cut them out, so I'm not, I don't see it, but they went out of their way not to show the guy playing Michael Jordan, and it was just it took my attention away from the story.
You've heard Ben Affleck talk about why, though, right?
No, I have not.
So going back to Brand, he goes, Michael Jordan is one of the most well-known, well-respected basketball players of all time. People know him. They see him. So if I tried to show anyone in this movie that is not Michael Jordan in that role, you're immediately going to say, that's not Michael Jordan. You're going to lower your vision of authenticity of the story down because I've faked you. I'm trying to fake you by showing a fake Michael Jordan. And I'm like, that's a really good thought. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I don't.
You're not buying
it. I don't buy it because that's part of when you're telling a story, you've got to get people vested in the story. Like, we all watch biopics and documentaries all the time, right? I didn't watch Ali and say, that's not Muhammad Ali. I didn't watch, Ray and say, well, that's not Ray Charles. So I think part of it is you've got to quickly establish, yes, it's a movie, it's not the person, but then once you're into the story, we give ourselves all the leeway to just rock and roll with the story. But if you make me keep reminding myself that, oh, they're not showing this guy's face, to me it distracts from the story. I mean, there's a show, what is it called? The Lakers show. I forget what it's called, but it's there's that show where they've got the guy playing Magic Johnson, they got the guy playing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? And obviously those aren't those guys, but you like. After a little bit, you just buy into it. Like, okay, that's the story. You're following a story. So I think for me, I enjoyed it. but that distracted me, and it made me keep coming out of the story and the reality they were trying to create.
Yeah, you said that about Ali. Maybe that's where Will Smith learned his slapping skills. Too soon? Too soon?
Not too soon at this point. I mean, I think it's been enough time.
By the way, Chris Rock's comeback on that. I don't know if you ever saw his special on that, where he gives like into a full 10-minute monologue. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, we're way off topic here, so bringing us back.
Way off.
You are a man who's talked a lot about branding and really invested in this space. And I know that both of us talk to a lot of folks that want to get involved in this space. And one of the things I think we both highly agree on is it's a team sport. There is no way you can go take down a $100 million transaction by yourself without somebody else being involved in it and offering some skill sets. But there's this also other side of the business where it seems a little scammy, a little shady, like, hey, I'm a guru, pay me $50,000 and I'm going to bring you to a seminar where I'll send you to the back of the room to upsell you into the next program. So we were having some good dialogue around coaching before this and the role of a coach in somebody that wants to get involved in this role, as well as the role of a coach for somebody just in general in life. So I'm hoping you can talk us through kind of your positioning on coaching, because I know you just launched a coaching program, but talk us through, like, maybe start us with what role has a coach played in your journey, and then maybe talk a little bit about your coaching program and what you're trying to do over there. Hey, fellow investors, before we dive into our next segment of the show, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk to you about a fantastic opportunity for you to invest with me. As you know, here at Ice Cream with Investors, I'm passionate about real estate investing and helping you navigate the exciting world of wealth creation through real estate. And that's why, for the first time, I'm thrilled to tell you about an opportunity for you to invest alongside of me. Over the past 3 years, I've been investing in multifamily, mobile home parks, car washes. I've even become the bank and lent out money to fellow real estate investors on a short-term basis. And now you can come join me. If you would like to jump on a call and learn more about this opportunity, head to icecreamwithinvestors.com/invest and find a time for us to connect. And now back to the show.
Well, I think we got to start holistically, right? So I think most people recognize that coaching is an effective way to grow and develop and ultimately get to your end game and your end results you're looking for. So for me, it's interesting. It's an interesting journey because when I first got into real estate, I was attending these REI events. I was reading books and networking my butt off, trying to learn everything I could about the industry and the business. And I remember trying to go to as many events as I could, and some of those events were those free hotel events, right? Where, hey, this Saturday from 9 to 11, we're gonna have the guys from, I won't say the TV shows, right? But those TV shows talk about how to get started in real estate. I'm like, oh, this sounds great, and it's free. Oh, we gotta go, right? So me and my wife, we pack it up, we get a sitter for the babies, and we go to this event. And at that event, hey, well, next, in 2 months, we're going to have a 3-day weekend for $197. I'm like, oh, okay, $197 is not that big of an investment. We can do that. So we pay the 3-day weekend, right? And there, they try to hit you with the big one, right? 30,000 to 40,000, whatever it is. And I remember really thinking about it, and I know some people may dismiss it and laugh, whatever, but we sat and we really thought about it, because what they were selling was a solution to some system problems that I felt we were missing. And I thought it made sense. And obviously, if you're going to invest that kind of money, you damn well better be committed to the results and putting in the effort. So we thought about it on day one. Day two, it became really clear that it was a hard pitch. Day one was inspirational and kind of a soft pitch, soft to medium pitch. And day two, it kind of turned, and they started talking about calling your credit card companies and getting an increase. And I was like, wait a minute, that feels like inappropriate, advice to ask someone who doesn't have the money to go call their credit card company and get an increase in their line so they can swipe it for this program. How do you have money to buy real estate? So in short, we didn't go to day three. We actually, we already had the sitter book. So she and I went to the library and we got books. We sat, we talked a lot about our strategy, what we needed, what we had. And about a month later, I met the person who ended up becoming my mentor. And there's this saying that, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And for me, I think having to go through the process of contemplating writing a huge check for this program was important for me to recognize that, okay, I'm willing to invest in this future, but this may not be the right path. So when I met the guy who became my coach, it was way more affordable for starters, but I also got clarity over that time frame between that third day of that workshop that I skipped and the time I met him with what I actually needed help with. And for me, I felt like I could underwrite deals at a basic level. So not huge deals, but I understood I'd find a 5 unit, right? I felt pretty comfortable with what I could do, but I had never raised money. I didn't know how to structure deals. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I wasn't comfortable working with an investor, even approaching an investor and just being blindsided with something. So I could take that risk with my own capital, right? Because I'm signing up for it, but I didn't want to sign up for someone else, especially people that I know, like, and trust and care about, to invest with me and let them down. So for me, hiring a mentor was all about getting somebody in my corner who could help me figure out where the blind spots were. So as I progressed and, kind of grew our business, we obviously got very knowledgeable, did some deals, did a lot of deals. And we talked to a lot of people who were looking to do the same kind of thing. And we didn't offer anything for them. I'd give you whatever advice I could give you, but we didn't have a program or anything like that. We initially launched our first coaching program after a night I was coaching this guy. I just wasn't getting paid for it, but I was coaching people. And my wife overheard me. She actually was waiting for me, and she was a little pissed off, to be honest with you. I had kind of missed out on dinner early because I had this call. And I talked to this guy for like an hour. And I'm coaching about this deal, how to structure, how to write the LOI, all this stuff. And I missed my kids going to bed, talking to this guy. And she said, "Is this guy paying you?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just trying to help. Like, people help me. I'm trying to help this guy." And she said, "Well, listen, I know you're trying to help people and it's a nice thing to do, but no one's going to respect your time if you don't respect your time. And you missed out on the rest of dinner. You missed out on your time with your family for someone who at most is just going to say thank you, and they don't even respect their time." And it really made me step back and think about how I respected my time and value. And the reality is we talk about mindset being so important to grow as a real estate investor. And I think at that time, I don't know if I really believed that people could or should pay me for my time and my knowledge. I didn't feel like I had accomplished enough to charge someone to talk to me, right? And that conversation really just made me sit and stew in it for a minute. And it was less about the money and all of that. It was just more about, we do all of this for a future, right? To be a more present father, to have time, flexibility, and all these things. And even though this wasn't my day job, I felt almost an obligation to help these people, right? No, this guy needs my help. He needs my help. I gotta miss out on dinner to go talk to this guy. That's how I approached it, And in a very, I think, innocent, caring kind of way, but the reality is I wasn't respecting my time. And I think that day I slowly started to shift and say, you know what? Well, let's see. Why don't I put together a program? If people want to pay for it, great. If not, okay, that's fine. But at least this way, there's a mutual respect and mutual benefit. And we ended up getting some clients. I'm like, okay, well, now I got to invest in this and make sure I'm delivering for them. So that launched our one-on-one coaching program. And that program is really geared towards that individual. So it is a program where we help people with, investing in real estate, particularly apartment investing, as well as raising capital for deals. But then beyond that, we also launched a mastermind. And that's what I think you're referring to recently is our mastermind, where that's less than $100 a month. And it's meant to be affordable so people can figure out if this is, one, what they want to do for real, but then two, get around people who can help them get to the next level. I think too often the decision is free resources like books, podcasts like this, going to a meetup, which is all great resources. But that's one option. And then the next option is paying 5 figures for coaching. And for a lot of people, you kind of need to continue progressing with your level of commitment and your comfort level of that commitment so that you can get really clear on what you're actually investing in and what you need help with. Like when I was able to hire my coach, if I didn't go to those 3-day courses or that 3-day workshop thing, I'm not sure I would have been ready to pay someone to coach me, because I just knew I didn't know certain stuff and I didn't know what it was. But that Sunday, that third day, I sat down and I wrote, okay, hey, Bigger Pockets is a resource. I can use Bigger Pockets. There's books there's podcasts. So I wrote those resources down. I started consuming more of that content and preparing myself. But the one thing that I kept realizing was a shortcoming was I had never raised money. And I didn't know, again, the legality of certain things. I didn't know, I had never done it. And I just wanted someone in my corner that I could look at and say, hey, am I doing this right? Hey, do you see anything that I missed in this deal? And that became really important to me. So I would say you should get coaching. You should be looking to pay for some sort of mentorship or mastermind when you are clear on what's holding you back from that next step. By all means, consume all the free stuff you can, but there will be a point where that's no longer sufficient for you to get to the next level. And if you're able to go and jump into a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 coaching program, and that's what you want to do next, by all means do that, and that's great. But if you're still trying to get clarity, or you're still trying to take that next logical step, whether it's my mastermind or another mastermind, consider kind of that bridge step so that you can continue that progression, but also continue to learn from other folks who are a little bit ahead of where you're at in the game.
Yeah, a couple things I'd say on that is, one, surrounding yourselves with people that are one step ahead of you is the best way to succeed in life, in my opinion. Second is, I still have a coach. You probably still have a coach. Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods at the top of their game still had coaches. So everybody needs some sort of coaching in their life, because to your point, it's about what's that next step and who can get me to the next step. Not, hey, I've already won 6 rings and won 18 tour championships or whatever Tiger Woods was at. It's about, okay, I want to get this particular part of my game or next step done. And then the last thing, man, I was shaking my head when you were saying earlier about when we pay something for free, we devalue it. And when we spend money on something, we're invested. And I just thought about an experience I had this week where I paid $500 for a coach or for a program around like how to hire a VA and manage and all that kind of stuff. Dude, I finished that course in 2 hours, and they said it was going to take 2 ways. It took me 2 hours to finish it. Took a bunch of notes. I still have it in my Notion over here and all that kind of stuff. And I'm laughing because I got a free course the other day that is still sitting in my inbox and is a tab open on one of my other screens. And probably that one is way more valuable to what I'm trying to accomplish in my life right now than the $500 one. But I knew, hey, if I'm going to spend this money, I'm going to get my money's worth at least out of it. So a lot of good points that you brought up there. John, I want to be...
Yeah, I think that's it, man. No, I was going to say to your point, man, just that investment is so critical, because there's a difference between being interested and being committed. And I'm not saying a huge amount where like you're betting the farm on it, but I do think it's really important to demonstrate that level of commitment, because it's also a reminder for you mentally, because there are always times you're not going to want to do something, right? I'm sure there's other things you could have done or would have rather have done than spend the 2 hours going through that course, especially if it was over the weekend, but you did it because you were committed to it. So I think the more you can buy in yourself, the easier it's going to be for you to get the results you're looking for.
And by the way, it got me to my next step too. Like I knew that this was the next step I needed, was hiring a VA in my life to take on some of the burden that I have, and paying $500. I don't know whether it was worth it or not, but it definitely got me to my next step.
Excellent.
John, I know we're a little over time here, so I want to be cognizant of your time and switch us to our last round. We are rebranding these the 4 toppings. Our first one is, what is your favorite book, or what is a book you've read recently that's given you a paradigm shift?
Ooh, man. So, Atomic Habits is my go-to here. Atomic Habits by James Clear is just a phenomenal book. There's one I'm reading right now, which is 10X is Easier Than 2X. And I think it's by Darren Hardy. And that one is a really great read. I'm about a quarter of the way through that right now. But that one is definitely worth checking out. And the general premise is, if you're trying to grow whatever it is you're doing, if you're just trying to double that, you're probably looking at just doing more of what you're already doing or trying to find a way to simplify that. But if you're trying to 10x, or if you make a 10x goal to something, you have to stop and deconstruct what you're doing. And you're going to have to eliminate some stuff, and particularly 80% of what you're doing. And it could be 80% of your clients, 80% of your, calls, whatever it is. You're probably going to have to take the 20% of your business, of what's working best, eliminate the 80% that's not that. You're going to take a step back. It might take a year or 2 or 3 to get back to where you are today. But that is the only way to really 10x something, is to eliminate a large chunk of what you're doing today. And it might be walking away from a whole consumer segment. It might be, a huge shift. But it's a really intriguing book to help you think about what it really takes to 10x your business.
I like it. I'm going to have to check that out because it's on my mind right now. Our second one is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, man. I've been fortunate enough to get a lot of great advice in my life. When I was in high school, I wrestled, and we had a saying, so I hope this counts, but there was a saying on the back wall, and the saying was very simple. It was just, tough times don't last, tough people do. And the notion was, you're going to be in tough situations. It's not about the actual situation. It's about you developing yourself to be a person who's resilient. So that's always helped me navigate, challenging times, or that self-doubt and things like that. So I would give that the best quote.
Yeah, that's very, very impactful for right now in the real estate industry, I would say. Our third one is, what is the best, Our third one is, what are you most proud of in your life?
I think we all measure success differently. One of the things that, if you would have talked to me maybe 15, 20 years ago, if you were to have me sit down and ask me what does success look like for me 15, 20 years from then, I would have probably said to be a great present dad. I think that's really high on my list, is being a present father. One who has the ability to attend his kids' events and, just be heavily involved in her life. And I think that's the thing I'm most proud of. Like, I coach my son's football team. I'm very, my other son he's a soccer player, and I'm like, you don't want me coaching a soccer kid, but I'll be at all your events. I'll be at practice. I'll be at the games. I'll go outside and work with you. I'll be your dummy and your defender, and you can work around me, but I ain't coaching you. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is just and seeing, kind of the joy and the time we get to spend together as a family. I think that's the thing I'm most proud of.
I'm smiling because Shep is really big into soccer, and I'm just like, run faster, because I've never played soccer growing up.
Oh yeah, that's like 90% of us on the sidelines. Kick it, pass it. Just yelling out random stuff, and I'm like, what's offsides? What is offsides? And I'm asking, no one knows. So,
well, our fourth one and last one is, if you could sit down and eat a bowl of ice cream with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Man, so If you're asking like right now who I'd sit down with, dead or alive, it would definitely be my grandmother. My grandmother passed away 22 years ago, and she deserves a lot of the credit for who I am, and all the things you like about me, you could probably attribute to, not all, but most of them you could attribute to her. Just a wonderful person, always extremely positive. She made me feel special in a way that only a grandmother could do, and just for context, my mom is one of 8 children. So, my dad's adopted. So my dad's the only one, and I'm talking about my dad's grandmother or my dad's mother. So I was the only grandchild for 7 years until my brother was born, on that side. On my mom's side though, I was just another kid, and there's nothing wrong, but there was like 15 of us over there. So I was just another kid. So I would live in this duality where I was just AU. They couldn't figure out my name. I was AU, and I was asthmatic. I had a bunch of health issues as a kid, so I had a bunch of allergies. So I was a hard child to just have if I weren't your kid, right, on that side. But on my grandmother's side, she knew, like, all my favorite things to eat today are things she made. She catered to me in a way that allowed me to grow my confidence as a sickly child. I thought were, I just, and I just sit and think about it. Like a lot of the confidence, a lot of those things, it comes from her nurturing. And I would love to sit with her just to talk about life. And we did when I was in college, man. We was sitting. I'd talk to her longer than I talked to anybody else. We'd have 2-hour-long conversations about girls I was dating, life. She gave me the best advice. You asked about best advice. Another thing she told me was don't get married until you're 30 years old. My parents got married when they were very young. Didn't work out. And most grandmothers don't really get into this. She was telling me exactly this is why, this is what happened. Here's what you need to do with your life. But she was very, again, loving and endearing, like just the way she did it. And like if she said something, I took it as gospel. I challenged pretty much anything anyone else told me. But if she told me something, it was word, and I just stuck with it. So I would love to have a bowl of ice cream with her, man.
Did she also like Coors Light too?
My grandmother, I never saw her sip anything. She's like your typical sweet old black grandma, man. She, church every week, right? So nah, man, no damn. But dinner was every day at 4:30, not 4:33, not 4:27. If it was early, she just put it on simmer. Like 4:30 was dinner. Like it was old school, man. It was that. But no, there was no Coors Light.
Wow, she sounds like a very special woman, and I know she's looking down.
She
very
was,
happy
man. I
about
love her, man. I love her.
Where you've become, what you've become.
Yeah.
Well, John, fantastic conversation. If our listeners wanted to reach out to you, learn more about your multifamily syndications, your coaching programs, everything you got going on, where's the best place we can point them?
Go to the website. We've got information on the mastermind there if you want to check that out, if it's a fit, if you want to get on our investor list or get a sample deal package from us, if you want to be active or passive, I advise you to check that out. You can steal the information. I mean, it's there. It's free. So if you want to steal kind of some of the information we share, by all means, it's your prerogative. That's what we put up there. But just go to casmoncapital.com. We've got a bunch of resources available there.
Awesome. John, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely, Matt. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for listening to Ice Cream with Investors. If you like what we serve you here, it would mean the world to me if you would like, subscribe, and leave a review on your favorite podcast app.